Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Misha E. Golf, and I'm the Technical Manager here at the CRRC. This webinar is a prerequisite to the in-person training that will be held at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory on July 10th. And the purpose of this webinar is to give you all an introduction to the CRRC and our testing and reporting requirements. During the in-person training, you all will have the opportunity to actually use the test methods we talk about today. So a few items of housekeeping before we get started. All of the call-in lines, so your audio, has been muted just to avoid any background noise. So if you have any questions, please comment in the chat box within the Join Me session. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so as you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put that in the chat box and we will get to it at the end. Also, this slide deck will be distributed to all the attendees along with the recording of today's webinar. So in terms of today's schedule, I'm going to give an introduction and overview just about the CRRC and how we work, as well as our product rating process. We'll also go over the testing requirements and reporting requirements. And at the very end, we'll have a little bit of information about the in-person training and have that question and answer session. All right, so to kick things off, we're going to go through an introduction and overview to the CRRC. As I mentioned before, my name is Misha E. Golf. I am the Technical Manager for the CRRC, and I've been with the CRRC since 2015. My responsibilities include overseeing the accredited laboratories and test farms and lab trainings. Also managing our technical working groups. We have any given number of technical topics we're exploring at any time, so I'm in charge of moving those things forward and reporting out to the technical committee. Also assisting with research studies. We do one of our pillars of our mission, as you guys will learn in a little bit, is research, and so I'm in charge also of working on research proposals and actually doing some of the work wherever possible, and also just administering those to make sure that they're running smoothly. I also am in charge of reviewing any product application that comes in for technical review. We have a couple other people on staff that help out with that as well, but I'm kind of in charge of overseeing that effort. So a little bit of background also about just lab trainings in general that the CRRC has provided. They have been held at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. I'll refer to that as LBNL moving forward, since 2001. So these photos are actually from some of the first lab trainings in 2001 and 2003. And we have gotten participants from different countries and different industry sectors. So it's not necessarily just for people that want to become an accredited independent test lab with us. It's really just anyone who has an interest in the testing methodologies that we go over. So in terms of a little bit of background about the CRRC itself, we were established in 1998 as a 501c3. We celebrated our 20th anniversary back in 2018, had a big banquet, so that was fun. And we are a third-party rating organization for roofing products. So we pride ourselves on being independent and non-biased, and we provide this rating program for roofing companies. We are also an Energy Star certification body. So some of you may be aware that the Energy Star program for roofs is sunsetting. They have released information about that, but until the program formally shuts down, we are going to continue to be an Energy Star certification body, which means that manufacturers can send their products through our process to get that Energy Star certification. We handle kind of all the paperwork. We're also an ANSI accredited standards developer. We have one American National Standard, the ANSI CRRC S100. We're also an ISO 17065 accredited organization, which means that I think for all so we have a kind of a similar assessment process that we have to go through to maintain our accreditation. And we're also an ASTM organizational member. One of my other responsibilities is actually attending ASTM DO8 committee meetings. And we have our eye on a couple other committees for the test methods that we reference in our program. So one thing that's really great about the CRRC is we have a member-elected board of directors. We have 11 directors. We also have some ex officio directors as well. And the thing that's really great about the board is that it's balanced. Both our board and technical committee balance is really important. The board considers the technical recommendations that are made by our technical committee. We also have other standing committees, but these are kind of the two major governing bodies of the CRRC. The technical committee is a little bit larger. We have 32 members, where 16 of those are voting members and 16 are alternates. So any sort of technical decision is going to go through the technical committee and then will be recommended to the board for consideration. But the board ultimately has the final say in kind of the direction of the organization, in addition, of course, to votes that are put to membership at our annual general membership meeting every June. So in terms of the lab background with the CRRC, we have 6 accredited independent test labs, and I will define that momentarily, what that means. We also have 2 accredited test farms, so that's actually where the samples are going to go out for 3-year weathering. Again, we'll provide a little bit more information about that now. So you're going to see a few terms throughout this presentation. The first is a licensee. So we define that as a roofing manufacturer that is licensed to rate products with the CRRC. You don't have to be a CRRC member to be a licensee. It just means that you want to rate products with us. Also, we have members that are not licensees, obviously. So those are kind of mutually exclusive. But in the context of this training, licensee is the important thing to keep in mind. We also have accredited independent test labs. So these are laboratories that are completely independent from any licensee, and they are the ones who do all of the testing for the CRRC. So again, we have these specific set of tests that we allow, and they are trained. They have attended a lab training and met several other requirements. One of those is being accredited to ISO 17025. And they conduct all the testing for our program. So they're very important, and we really appreciate them. We also have accredited manufacturer test labs. So these are test labs that are affiliated with a licensee. So right now we do not accept test results from these AMTLs, but it's helpful for the licensees to have this accreditation to show for their ISO compliance. So we kind of offer this pathway for them. They participate in our biannual interlaboratory comparison study, which is where we send a round of samples to all of the test labs and test farms and make sure that everyone is reporting things consistently and see if there's any confusion that needs cleared up about certain test methods and things like that. So because the AMTLs participate in that, it does provide a value to them. So the CRRC has a really diverse membership. We are a member-based organization. We are comprised not just of industry. It's kind of a myth that we want to bust here today. We have academia, laboratories, representatives from the government, designers, contractors, trade associations. So again, we don't only represent roofing manufacturers. We have this really diverse membership. So the CRRC's mission, we have 3 pillars: ratings, research, and education. So we want to implement and communicate a fair, accurate, and credible radiative energy performance rating system for roof surfaces. We want to support research into the radiative properties of roofing surfaces, and also to provide education and support to people that are interested in understanding and comparing various roofing options. So to go into a little bit more detail about each one of those, in terms of our ratings, we only look at the surface properties. So that is solar reflectance and thermal emittance. So solar reflectance is the fraction of solar energy that is reflected by the roof, and thermal emittance is the ability of the roof surface to radiate absorbed heat from the sun. So another common misconception is that we set minimum requirements. That is not true. We will accept ratings for any product type. Solar reflectance and thermal emittance are measured on a scale from 0 to 1. So we will accept ratings for products that fall at either end of that spectrum. And we do have information about codes and minimum requirements available as part of our education pillar. But again, we are not involved in setting any sort of value in terms of a minimum requirement, and we don't exclude any roofing products from participating in our rating program. So obviously the key thing to mention here is our rated products directory. It's a publicly available resource. It lists all of our rated products, and I will provide additional information about this later in the presentation, but it's found on our website. There's a link here. It's coolroofs.org/directory. And again, this is publicly available. We have lots of filters and ways for people to hopefully find the product that they need to find very easily. So the second pillar of our mission is research. As I mentioned before, we periodically sponsor or participate in technical research studies. Usually that's looking at new test methods or weathering research, but we've also looked at existing test methods, looking at historical data. So pretty much anything that has to do with the radiative properties of roofs, we're interested in. So research studies are also great because it gives the licensees, test labs, and test farms of the CRRC an opportunity to participate in something other than just rating products. So kind of furthering the research in this industry. And we have relied on test labs and test farms for a lot of research. We've received donations from licensees. So this is really valuable, and we really, again, appreciate their participation. So the last pillar, again, of our mission is education. We have a few brochures that are available for a variety of audiences, from the general public to code setting officials. We also engage in some outreach activities, including writing articles for industry publications, participating in webinars, and also we have presented at several conferences over the years. We try to do at least a couple a year on various topics, either an introduction to the CRRC and what we do, or sometimes it can be more specific depending on what they're looking for. But yeah. So maintaining credibility is really important to the CRRC. We have a few ways that we do this. The first kind of primary way is the random testing program. You can think of this as our annual audit program. Right now, 5% of eligible products are selected from our whole pool of rated products and basically, again, audited. So we actually collect the samples via a third-party collection agency to make sure that, there's no tampering with the samples. And they come to CRRC headquarters, we label them and send them out in packages to our AITLs. And the AITLs will test those products as if they were testing them for an initial rating and see what results they get. And if the test results for random testing meet the passing criteria, then the product will be deemed to the testing program. if they fail, if the results that the test lab gets are, very different from what we have on our rated products directory, then we would go through a second and potentially third test, up to a third test. They have 3 chances to pass before we would consider them out of compliance, and we would want to follow up with the licensee. Sometimes there's been a formula change that hasn't been recorded. Sometimes a supplier has changed that has caused the radiative properties to change. So this program is really important and a really good way to QA our directory and make sure that the information that we are providing on the directory is accurate and credible. We also have a accredited standard, as I mentioned, the ANSI CRRC S100, and that provides information about the testing and reporting requirements for roof products. We also are in charge of updating that every 5 years per ANSI's requirements, and it does go through a public review process. So any stakeholder that has an interest in this topic has the ability to provide input on that document. As I mentioned, we also have a technical committee, and it is balanced. We have balanced requirements so that no one roofing manufacturer can have a majority in the group. We also make sure that there's a strict chain of custody throughout our product rating process. So basically, that just means that when a sample is going for a rating, as soon as it leaves the licensee, it's not going to go back to the licensee until it has fully completed its aging process and its age product rating process. So things are really handled by the independent test lab and the test farm as soon as it leaves the licensee, just to make sure, again, that there's no tampering with samples, things like that. And lastly, as I have mentioned, our AITLs and test farms have to be ISO accredited. So that's another way that we make sure that our program has credible information. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about the specific requirements for AITLs, AMTLs, and test farms because the specific requirements do vary. But in general, there are some things that are required for all of these parties. So the first is that obviously everyone needs to adhere to our testing, weathering, and participation requirements that are in our CRRC 1 program manual, our product rating program manual, and also the ANSI CRRC S100. Also, we have annual renewals, so that means that you're continuing to participate. We have an annual renewal fee, so paying that is another prerequisite for continuing to participate. And also, all of the AITLs, AMTLs, and test farms have to participate in the CRRC interlaboratory comparison study that happens every other year. So we did have one in 2019. The next one won't be until 2021. The specific requirements of that vary. For example, if you have a test farm participating, they only need to test color because they are not equipped to test solar reflectance and thermal emittance. That's not something that they do for our program, so we don't ask them to do that as a part of the ILC. But AITLs are asked to test, to all of their capabilities. So if they're capable of testing it and providing us with data for a product rating, then we want them to test it through this ILC process. Just a few more requirements to go over. The first is that at least one person has to attend an in-person lab training, and that person is designated as the responsible person. So they're the one who's going to supervise or perform all of the testing that is for a CRRC product rating, or even for research studies and things like that. Key thing to note here is that if there are any personnel changes, we really need to be notified, and in fact, it is a requirement that we are notified within 10 days, because it's really important that at least one responsible person is at that lab to be an AITL, because again, otherwise we can't have confidence in the data that we are receiving from that lab. to post on our directory. So also, we have the CRRC rated products logo, we have the CRRC member logo, accredited test farm logo. Making sure that those are used properly is a condition of continuing to be an AITL, AMTL, or test farm. And again, as I mentioned, there are more specific requirements for each lab or test farm type. But if you have specific questions about those, you can either take a look at the CRRC 1 program manual or, of course, reach out to me with questions. So the last thing I want to mention here on the introduction is just that there's a few key resources that you're always going to go back to when you're working with the CRRC. The first, of course, is our website, coolroofs.org. The second is our CRRC 1 Product Rating Program Manual, as I've referenced a couple times here. And both this document and the ANSI CRRC S100 are housed on our All Forms page of our website. I have a link here. Again, these documents, I can't stress enough how helpful it is to be able to have a copy of these documents available to reference as you, especially as you are being introduced to the CRRC. If you're not familiar with our process and requirements, this is definitely an important page to bookmark. And I will note that, you know, especially the CRRC 1 program manual, it is a document that has updates several times a year. So it's really important to go to this All Forms page and actually make sure that you have the most current version, as opposed to, you know, downloading a copy that may go out of date in just a couple months. And lastly, for users of our online rating portal, we do have a frequently asked questions kind of a page to try to help provide a resource for that. And I will talk a little bit more about our online rating portal shortly, but just keep that in mind as we move forward.